series, which is Sustaining Our Future. So the city official plan has what's called an ecological corridor map in this area here. And that ecological corridor connects, which you can't see, a large provincially significant wetland and woodland on this side, the Torrance Creek Swamp, to the Hanlon Creek provincially significant wetland and woodland on the other side of the border. In the 90s, when we were doing some watershed studies across the city, they one of the studies identified that this area is a local movement corridor for white-tailed deer. So the deer move back and forth between this provincially significant wetland and the one across the street for overwintering and foraging and to complete different portions of their life cycle. So recognizing that, back in 2004, when the Salvation Army development was put in place, a 10-meter wide swath of land, which is this right here that we're looking at right here, was reserved as part of a corridor mainly for deer, but for any other critters that want to use it as well. But the thinking wasn't that this would just be 10 meters. The thinking was that this would be a wider corridor. So when the natural heritage system was being developed in the late 2000s, that same corridor idea was put into the official plan as an ecological linkage. And so it has been mapped, and the linkage has and is being implemented through development applications on 5 different properties, and through the EA that's currently underway, being undertaken by the city along Gordon Street. So it's a little bit difficult to describe unless you can see it from above, but you can see 10 meters that was reserved here. The property to our rear here, the development to our rear here, the corridor starts, so a portion of their property was required to be set aside for the corridor. 10 meters on the adjacent property there, that you can just see the building that was built there, makes it a 20-meter wide corridor here. And then there's another property just right there, there's still a small single dwelling there that's a current development proposal in for a 6-story residential building. And the final 10 meters going this way, adjacent to this part of the corridor, is being set aside to complete the corridor on this side of Gordon Street. The colorful building on the other side of the street was the 5th private development, and when that was being proposed for development, it was ensured that this corridor would line up on the other side with natural area, so that, i.e., so the corridor didn't lead to a building. And the final piece of the puzzle is, as I hinted at, the environmental assessment that's being conducted by the city as part of Gordon Street improvements. The study area runs from Edinburgh to Lowes Road. And a wildlife crossing was also identified, 2 of them in this area, for the deer in our official plan, in the natural heritage system policies. And the EA has the responsibility of looking at mitigative measures so that there's, when the deer get to the road, that there's something in place to make sure that we're mitigating the human and wildlife conflict that will be there, or that is there. So one of the interesting things that we found through all these various studies, the sub-watershed studies dating back to the 90s, and now all the different environmental impact studies that have been required for the developers to do as part of all these individual development applications, is that the deer used to cross sort of in a broad swath between Arkle and Edinburgh. And that's because what used to be here, and is still here in some cases, is sort of single dwellings on large properties, what ecologists call a permeable landscape. So it's permeable for wildlife. But as it's getting redeveloped, the use has become more intensified. That permeable landscape is disappearing, and that's why we plan for connections between natural areas. So the 2 PSWs that I was provincially significant wetlands that I was talking about. So that's a good example of how the natural heritage system is a connected, make sure that connections are kept between natural areas even when development is going to happen, by ensuring that there'll be corridors left over for the wildlife and the plants. Plants do travel through their seeds, can move back and forth and preserve that diversity. So we just wanted to show you this, that people may not know what this is, but once all the development's there, you'll see this corridor that leads to Gordon Street and goes to the wetland on the other side.
Does the corridor actually get any use?
Yes. Oh, yes. So I thank you. I got diverted in my own thinking. So as part of those studies that have been done, they have set up wildlife cameras, and what they're finding now is because of the intensification that's already occurred sort of farther north, the deer are traveling down this way, and they're using this, and in fact they have pictures of them using this parking lot, using that corridor. So the deer are moving back and forth. And interestingly, the vast majority of the use of this corridor is occurring in the wee hours of the morning. So that might be good news in terms of conflicts when they cross Gordon Street. But the EA will be looking at that. So.